Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Today I'll be looking at Affinity Photo and how it currently compares to Photoshop. Since my last video there's been a significant amount of updates and I thought it was time to take another look at it. Before we begin, please let me give you guys a little disclaimer about this review. This isn't a sponsored video. I personally purchased both Affinity Photo, designer and publisher for my work, and I'm continually testing their performance as a possible alternative to Adobe Suite, and in certain cases have transitioned completely. Although I'll be pointing out quite a few features which I would like to have implemented, my overall view is positive, especially considering the changes which have been made over the past couple years. All the views and opinions will be based on my personal experience within the Windows ecosystem. Some of you may have seen my previous review of this software which had been completed a couple years ago. Since that time, a major feature was added to the interface which makes it far more relevant as a possible solution for small animation companies or individuals. Along with these features, there have been great improvements in the overall performance of the software, which greatly aids in its usability. To begin, the version I'm currently testing is the 1.8.3.641 stable version of the software. Most of the standard features that you would expect to find in a digital painting software are present within Affinity Photo. Performance has been greatly improved, however some changes could be made, and we'll go over those later in this video. The layers panel is set up on the right hand side with the typical default tabs of color, swatches, stroke, brushes, effects, styles, text styles, transform, history, and navigator. On the left hand side, the most common tools are present, along with some additional ones. Some of these features include the color replacement brush and the pixel tool. Another feature which has been added to the interface is separation of key modes, which are referred to as personas. Although I'm not fond of the naming convention, its functionality is appealing. Each of these personas have specific sets of tools and panels associated to their use, and greatly diversifies the user interface. You have the photo persona, which is best suited for painting and drawing tasks. The liquify persona allows the distortion and manipulation of existing layers, although these have to be selected prior to entering this mode. The develop persona is more geared towards photo editing of raw files. A recently added persona is the tone mapping mode, which is geared towards color manipulation and is best suited for photography or after editing purposes. The last persona is the export persona, and this is used to prepare batch files for export. The object selection process is easier in Affinity Photo since what you click on normally gets selected unless something else is above that layer. Also, double clicking will allow you to navigate up to a certain point within the layer hierarchy. One thing that isn't present is the ability to right-click on the portion of the drawing to see a listing of all the layers underneath with a simplified hierarchy. This is relevant specifically for those doing revisions for pieces which may have been done by another employee or may have been done a long time ago. Otherwise, it would mean that the revisionist would have to manually click on each object to find the correct one, and this would not be practical in a work environment. There is still some compatibility issues with Photoshop if the piece hasn't been flattened. I was able to confirm this by using the same sample piece as a comparison between the two softwares. As you can see, a good number of background layers don't seem to be applying the proper blending modes, and this is causing a drastic change in the final image. The character, which is organized in a different manner, doesn't seem to be affected in this example. After further investigation, it was discovered that the issue was with the vector mask and not the clipping masks, which were mentioned in a previous video. If you intend to import files from Photoshop that contain vector masks, you'll want to keep this in mind so that you rasterize those layers. This is definitely something that will need to be addressed since a good number of shows seem to be heading towards a more painterly style background design in which vector masks are a mainstay. A good example of this being utilized in the animation field are shows like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. When working on that show, it was almost a requirement to utilize vector masks in Photoshop for clean looking edges, even if other software's options were available at the time. This is a feature that I would like to see in future iterations. During my last review, I made no secrets as to my grievances in having a partially implemented magic wand tool. The magic wand tool, which is also known as a flood selection tool in Affinity Photo, has since received an update to sample from all visible layers. This will make the tool far better suited for pieces which require painting of line graphics and is very much essential asset in its more widespread adoption. If you come across issues of not having your default foreground and background colors reset to black and white, there is an easy fix available. You will need to enable this at least once, however the setting should transfer over along with your existing keyboard shortcuts. Go to Preferences, plus Keyboard Shortcuts, plus Photo, plus Miscellaneous, plus Set Fill to black and white. Then make sure to allocate a keyboard shortcut to this feature. The default in Photoshop is the letter D. If the shortcut you've chosen causes a conflict with an existing shortcut, simply click on the triangle with the exclamation mark to make changes to that as well. A great feature which puts Affinity Photo ahead of Photoshop is the ability to have continuous clipping layers integrated with layer grouping hierarchy. You can essentially keep clipping groups onto each other for a significant amount of time before running into issues, and as of yet, I haven't actually come across the limit. A couple of notes regarding the keyboard shortcuts customization options. The basic functionality of the keyboard shortcuts is pretty good, but could use some refinement to make it more user-friendly. Having a drop-down menu which exposes the different options that are available for each portion would make it easier to navigate overall. I would personally prefer to see a scrollable window appear for a sub-item once a main category has been expanded. This would make things more visually appealing and would allow for the interface to be expanded in further. Currently, it can be quite daunting to find an option that is customizable within the shortcuts. I would also prefer to see a search option added to make things easier to find. Being able to allocate separate keyboard shortcuts for the layers panel is something I would prefer to see in the future, with a key component being that these only become active when the user's cursor is in that area. A great example is the Alt plus left click and drag command, which automatically duplicates a layer, allowing you to move this within your layer hierarchy in Photoshop. This is done intentionally to mimic the behavior as in the main window. This is something which is routinely utilized by most professionals within the animation industry. Something which both Affinity Photo and Photoshop lack is a more robust note-taking option. While Photoshop does have basic functionality, it's still pretty primitive. Perhaps a more refined option could be created instead. Having the notes on the side of the window in an expandable view with a short title would help a lot, but it could go a lot further than this. Add a color option, a sketch mode to quickly draw the revisions directly within the note layout, along with a small checkbox to make this visible during printout would expand this further. A task tracking option could be added at this point, which could be tied to different colors. The tools palette on the toolbar can be fully customized to the user's preference. The existing UI is well organized and easy to learn, so transitioning is relatively easy. By keeping things as simple as possible, they avoid overloading the user with information, which is a bonus for anyone moving over from another interface. There is still a lack of a pixel stroke option within Affinity Photo. This will be more relevant to those creating concept art, since normally this isn't for more polished pieces, but once again it should be looked at in the future. The main reason why people use this feature is that it allows for repeatability while creating long complicated line work with a textured brush. A great example is using this to create a long chain of fence. Normally you would use a vector line and apply a stroke to the line to create a repeating pattern. The brush itself would determine the type of chain and could be drawn in its place. If the user didn't like the sizing, they could hit undo and try it again, and this is what makes it such a powerful feature. In more complicated pieces, that separated line could then be transformed to work in a perspective view. The cloning stamp tool is a well-needed improvement. They've added a crosshair which is visible while painting in an area, so you know which location the sampling of the color is taking place. This makes things a lot easier because you can see where you'll need to change the sampling area rather than waiting to discover this as you go. The color picker tool is missing a pretty essential feature. At the moment, if a layer has a transparency, you can't select the original color prior to this transparency being applied. Both methods are needed since they are commonly used for two specific tasks. When a freelancer must replicate something like a shadow, it helps to know if they were colored in the same initial color. This can then be applied to multiple layers and added to the palette to simplify the painting process. However, in certain cases, there may need to be modified colors instead, and in this case, they often have to manually replicate the color used in Photoshop. The current implementation works specifically for the second use case, so having both of these features would be appreciated. The canvas rotation is pretty limited at the moment, only allowing for specific intervals. This option can be found by going to View plus Rotate, Left, Right, or Reset options, and can then be allocated to individual keyboard shortcuts. One big problem with both Affinity Photo and Photoshop is the inability to create a guide which follows the current angle of the canvas. This would be a feature which is specific to those who work significantly in perspective related tasks such as background designs or vehicles. It is important to note, however, that unlike Photoshop, Affinity Photo does have a perspective based tool. They have a tool where you can actually create a rough guide, but you're not able to modify how many reference lines you have, and it's not editable as a separate layer. So refining this would probably actually go a long way to making drawing perspective work a lot easier. Color coding of layers is currently available and is a welcome addition to the existing interface. To access this, you'll need to right-click on the layer and select a color circle on the bottom of the menu. In future versions, I would prefer to have it show more clearly through the layer, but it is still quite functional at the moment. The lack of a split screen option is still problematic for freelancers who must color in scenes. The inability to see the reference material docked beside the painted version means that more errors are likely to occur. This also does slow down the overall process quite a bit, since this doubles to triples the amount of time to check the reference for errors. While this may not seem like it takes a lot of time, it does make a difference when working an 8-hour shift where 1 hour is wasted. A workaround for the artboard is currently an option if you already have Affinity Designer. I do personally use artboards a lot in my content, but normally find this to be more applicable with graphic design work and therefore better suited for Affinity Designer overall. However, if you want to use artboards, you can by creating a blank document in Affinity Designer first and then opening this file in Affinity Photo. There is, as of yet, no ability to allocate a scratch disk. This is a pretty big deal when working with files that are extremely large. Normally when painting backgrounds, the painter needs to reference several images at a time simultaneously, and each of these images will take up more resources. By having a scratch disk, some of these resources can be placed on the scratch disk to help boost performance and make upgrades more financially feasible. Rather than spending a ridiculous amount of money on RAM, the artist can purchase an SSD to add to their computer. This has extremely fast speeds associated with it and comes in larger sizes, which makes it far more cost effective. So after everything I've said so far, what's the final verdict in this 2020 version of Affinity Photo? Well, for home users, I give it a mark of 9.5 out of 10 overall, because they're the least likely to have to submit work in a preset pipeline in which the suggested features would be necessary. For professional users, I give it a mark of 8.5 out of 10 because of its incompatibility issues with certain Photoshop features and its lack of proper workflow management strategies. How Affinity implements features that make it fast to use as well as compatibility through other software packages will definitely be what determines how it's adopted by industry professionals. If you liked the video and want to see more similar content, please hit the like button and post a comment with what you might have thought of this review. These videos do take several weeks to complete, so your help is greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you soon. Thank you and take care.